What catches you with this picture? We've had some interesting responses around the province. It's not suspension. Eye on the ball. Eye on the ball. Focus. Okay? This is what we're talking about when we speak to the OPDL. We need to increase standards in every facet of the game so we can produce more Christine Sinclairs, Diana Mathesons, Dwayne D. Rosario's, Atiba Hutchinsons more often. LTPD is going to help us be able to do that, and the OPDL will be the platform for that. Until now, players that have made it to the national team or made it to professional football have really done it in spite of the system. So they've gone outside of the system to get to where they've got to. And that's not to say that some clubs or some coaches have been very influential in their development, but the system itself hasn't moved the players through from a club, to district, to regional, to provincial and up. These players have had to go outside the system to get to these places. And we can do better than that. And we're going to. And the OPDL has started that. What the OPDL will do is it'll provide coaches of the appropriate qualifications and experience around our talented players. It'll ensure that there's regular, meaningful competition. It'll ensure that there's a holistic environment where we're not just looking after the football side of things, we're looking after all four corners of the athlete. And it will provide a 12-month periodised calendar as well, which is something we haven't had. Again, these things from a few weeks back, and if there is ever a call to action, and we're not just doing this for Ontario, we're doing it for our country. Okay, we've got a significant amount of the country's population. It's really important that we do this for our country. Timeframes. February 2013 is when we'll have the final information that will be released to clubs. The final information packs about what this league will be, and standards will be finalised, and the cost analysis and everything else that you need to understand before making decisions. Applications will open in June 2013. They'll be open for about a month, and then we'll go through about a 3-month period where there'll be assessment and selection of the clubs that apply to enter this league, and there'll be final OSA board approval of the league and the teams within the league at the September board meeting. This league will kick off in April 2014 with the U13 males and females. 1 year group to start with, and then we're going to phase it in each year. I want to take a second to clarify a few things, and as I've said earlier, and please receive this message the right way, the OPDL isn't for everyone, okay? Just like the OYSL isn't for every club at the moment. What's really important is that clubs understand the resources they have and the means that they have and where they want to operate within the system. And they listen to their members and make informed decisions about the role they play. And every club is critical to our sport. Okay, and what's important is that we work collectively. And I'll speak to that more shortly. Pre-season, January to April, I'll run through this really quickly. We spoke to a lot of this back at the conference. Competitive season, April to November. Winter break, December to mid-January. And as I said before, we start with one age group, the 2001s, and then we collect another year group as we move through. Try that a second time. And clubs have a choice. You come in on a 2-year licence, so clubs coming in 2014 will be a licence for U13 and U14. Then we open applications again. So if clubs aren't at the start line here and not ready, they will still have a chance moving forward. It's not a league that's closed, and then it's not, those doors aren't opening again. It's important that we understand that. It is a club-based competition, so there's no district entry, and I want to take a second to understand this as a technical decision. There's a lot of consideration before making this decision. There's rationale behind it. If we look around the world, where does player development happen? In clubs and academies throughout the world. That's where player development happens. We're not too different here in Ontario. More often than not, that's where player development happens. Yes, we identify some and they come out into a regional program or a district program or a provincial program, but then they go back into their club environments. Okay? That's where our resources are as a membership, generally. The districts will play an important role in ensuring that their membership have representation, that the right discussions are happening, that there's a pathway for players within their district to this environment. So whether that means facilitating or guiding discussions about how there's representation, affiliation, amalgamation, other entities, those are things that need to be discussed. Okay, because the structure we've got hasn't been working. We need to force, that's probably too strong a word, but we need to ask serious questions of ourselves to do what's best for the player. It's really important that if the district was entering as well, it could be seen as limiting, because over time there could be more entry from a certain area. Okay, so if there's only one district team, then we could be limiting the amount of players that could have access to this environment. This will obviously mean a shift of district resources, and we're going to work with our districts as we make that transition. We'll see, at the moment, I think of our 21 districts, there's probably only 6 that have a form of technical resource. And of those 6, I think there's only a couple of full-time resources. Otherwise, we're talking about a part-time technical resource. It's so important that we hold on to those technical resources in districts. Okay, it's really important that districts go out there and try to get more technical resources on board. Those resources will change where they operate. So rather than working with the player as much as they have in the past through district programs, they'll start to work with coach education, succession planning and development around coaches, delivering coach education courses, still identifying players, but at a little tier lower, and ensuring that they're moving in the right direction. I'll talk to that more soon. Quick photo before I got here. My ear worked out quite well. So what are we hearing? We're hearing a lot in regard to the OPDL, and again, a lot of misinformation. So I want to take a second to clarify some misconceptions specifically relating to the OPDL. First one is coaching qualifications. As of December 2011, this is CSA information from their database. We had 27 CSA National A licenses here in Ontario, 132 CSA National B licenses, 15 UEFA B or higher, and that's through the Irish FA, primarily because it's very hard for our coaches to get into the English FA, or other countries aren't English speaking, so it's very hard to access that level of qualification. We haven't been able to get numbers from the US for the USSF B license. Okay, we know we've got a lot of coaches in our membership that have gone across the border and have that qualifications, which would be equivalent to a National B. So quite a significant number here. The other point that I will say is these numbers only take into account people that have had licenses from 2003 on. Okay, so the CSA records don't go back beyond 2003 when they made a transition to a new coaching pathway. So there will be coaches out there that have a National B or a National A before before 2003. They're still valid. Their current process of recertification is send your certificate in, it'll get a stamp, it's good for 5 more years. Be quick doing that, because that's going to change really quickly, where CSA will expect coaches to maintain licensing to do professional development. I think it'll be a 4-year term where you need to either attend certain events or do some sort of refresher. So if there are people out there, make sure that is heard. But if there are certificates out there, get them to Ray Clark pretty quickly. Or to, you know what? Don't get them to Ray Clark and come and do the work. It's probably more important. We stay in touch with the development that's going on. This year in Ontario, some really good things have happened. So our pre-B license, we've delivered 18 pre-B licenses in 2012. That's about 280 coaches through the pre-B. In 2011, we delivered 9 courses. Okay, so that's 100% growth, which is great. The provincial B, we delivered 2 courses this year, roughly 62 coaches through that qualification, through that license. In 2011, we delivered 1 with about 35. And it's even better, the news. We did have a success rate of about 45% on those licensed courses. That's increased to 60% this year. So that tells me a couple of things. One, that you, the clubs, are ensuring that your coaches are well prepared before they take that step to that license. So that support, that mentoring is improved, which is great. Okay, and 2, we've made some good changes to the delivery of the course to ensure it's more of a supportive learning environment as well. So this is great. People have seen some of the messages from the April 12 conference and they've promoted their people through the system. So great news. 2013, OSA will deliver 3 provincial B licenses. CSA will be delivering 3 national B licenses. One of those national Bs will be here in Ontario. We're guaranteed a minimum of 12 coaches on that course. Talking to Ray, we usually have about 20 Ontario coaches go through this license per year, so some obviously go to other provinces just due to work schedules and when they can get the time off. So I've made a prediction, a conservative prediction. Moving forward, we're going to have 10 new national B licensed or higher each year. Remembering I'm not even factoring in immigration and licenses that will come from overseas, equivalency. Okay, so there's a lot of other factors there that will come into play. So when we transfer this to our OPDL and the forecast that we need as we move forward, this is an assumption. We all know what assumption means. Please don't leave this room thinking there's only going to be 20 clubs. Assumption. Assumption that we have 20 clubs for the sake of this exercise. So our requirement is 2 national B licenses or higher in 2014. So you can see if a club chooses to progress, how that just multiplies. 2, 4, 6, 8. So if we had 20 OPDL clubs, this would be the requirement for national B or higher in its first year through to 160 by 2017. And you can see here, with that conservative prediction, we've got more than enough national B or higher licenses in Ontario. What we haven't done is overlay the location of where those licenses are in regard to our land, our geography. Really hard to do that just because the addresses aren't that accurate and we know how many times people shift since 2003. So that's something we'd like to do, but it's really hard to be accurate with that forecasting. So I just want to show the licenses are here. The other big piece of information that we're hearing is the cost of a national B coach. And what I will say is, one thing I struggle a little bit with is the fact that people are challenging the fact that we've set a high coaching qualification. Because what that's telling me is people are stuck in comfort zones. They haven't been prepared to challenge themselves and move. And the system hasn't pushed them through the system. It hasn't given them that mentoring and support that we need to. So we've got to do a better job of that. Because guess what? Who's missing out? The players. All right? So if we move forward to national B coach, I've heard all sorts of things floating around, and I'm not saying the cost to do the license, I'm saying the cost of a national B or higher licensed coach. When let's run through a few scenarios. In our current provincial program, we have primarily a national A license or higher. We have a few national B licenses. We pay the people in our provincial program, outside of our regional coaches, $500 a month to give their time to work with the talented player. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there. Our bigger clubs in the province, from some quick analysis we've done, $10,000 would be a cost for a national B or higher, and this is in our bigger clubs. The BC, SPL, so they've just started a standards-based league this year, around about the $10,000 mark, national B or higher. I shouldn't use this example, but I will. When I was the high performance manager at New Zealand Football, we were paying national coaches to coach under 17 men's and women's team, under 20 as well, $10,000 plus expenses for national teams. Okay, and then the New Zealand dollar's not that flash either. But I'm just trying to put things in perspective because there's a lot of misinformation circulating, and there's got to be variation and variety throughout the province for a number of reasons. Okay, compensation's going to vary. So a cost of a national B or higher coach here in Ontario, here in the GTA, will be different than Thunder Bay, Sudbury, Ottawa, okay, because of the local needs in the market. The coach themselves, whether they are an ex-national coach with a lot of experience or whether it's a new recruit that's just got their national B license, that will be a determining factor. What that person's actually doing, are they just coaching one team? Or are they in a technical director, club head coach role, where they're actually working full-time in the club environment, looking after the implementation of the development, the recreational matrices, having technical oversight, the different development stages, in a full-time position within the club. Because that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure that there's a career path within the game. We can have more of those people that are out in the business world wanting to work in soccer, earning their dollars, helping us provide that environment for the kids. We want there to be a professional career in our sport. We want there to be more opportunities for full-time profession. Okay, the financial position of a club will be another determining factor. So what I'm trying to say here is, don't listen to the noise. Don't listen to the noise. It's going to vary, and clubs need to make the right decision for them based on their environment. Some environments, it might just be a contract. Okay, what we want to see is sustainability and professionalism with how we progress in this matter. Standards. Okay, we released these at the conference back in April. I'm not going to go through them line by line. I'm just going to touch on some of the areas that have been refined, so there's awareness of them. If you have questions at the end, this is where you feel free to shoot your hand up. Originally, in the technical criteria, we said the requirement would be 3 national B licenses or higher. It's actually 2 now. But what we are saying is that one of those national B licenses must be sidelined each game. Okay, so there is a stipulation there. We didn't speak to the requirement for assistant coach. The minimum requirement for assistant coach is to be registered to take the pre-B license in 2014. Obviously, we'd prefer coaches to have the pre-B license, but the minimum requirement is registration to take it in 2014. We've also said that it is mandatory that coaches, there must be a female member of the technical staff on the female side of the game, so whether that's as a head coach or assistant coach. Existing single-gender clubs can enter the OPDL if they're an existing single-gender club. And we've scaled back the player assessments. Originally we said 3 player assessments, now we're saying 2 written and 1 verbal. And there's some strong recommendations in those standards as well, things that we're encouraging clubs to do. So that's the technical side of things. When it comes to administrational standards, things haven't changed. What we spoke to at Soccer 12 was the current gold standard with club excellence would be what's required, and that is still the case. I say we're talking to governance and administration here. That information has just been captured in a similar format as the other documents for the OPDL. And finally, facility standards. We've provided more information there as well. And really, here we're just speaking to what is needed from a training and playing perspective, trying to provide more clarification. I think there is, don't get me wrong, we need to try and do everything we can to provide the best environment for the players. But we understand if we're providing a 12-month periodised calendar, at those few months at the start of the season, potentially at the end, while we'd like to see you in the right facilities, if it is a gymnasium, appropriate sized gymnasium for a small period of time, we can live with that as we start to make those transitions. Just as an understanding of some of the costs that will be coming down to our member clubs as we move in this way. I'm just going to fly over a few other areas just to update you on, so you have a current update to where we are. We sent a survey out probably about 3 months back in regard to LTPD. One of the questions, a couple of the questions there related to the OPDL specifically. We've got an audience that said we're interested to receive more information about how that's progressing. We've got about 50 or 60 clubs that expressed interest there. We haven't been too proactive in the advocacy that we've provided. We'll start to be a bit more proactive in that space next year once we have some of the information finalised to say, here is the final information, these are the things you should be thinking about. But we haven't been doing that at this point. We've been looking a lot into best practice. We've got meetings arranged for early next year with the US Development Academy League and some of their key personnel. We've been speaking to the BC SPL because they're obviously very similar culture. We're in the same country. And they have just moved forward with a standards-based league this year. So obviously they've been through this process. They're learning the teething problems. There's a lot that we can take from that. So we're in regular contact with BC. Hardship fund. We're really mindful that costs could be a barrier to getting some of the best talent in our province into these environments to progress their development. That's where some of the most gifted players are. We need to ensure we're providing opportunities for them to access this competition. We're working on a hardship fund, what we will do provincially, what we'll expect of clubs to ensure there are avenues and support for players that come from lower socio-economic backgrounds to ensure that they have access to this football and this development. There are progressive clubs out there. I'm sure many of you, there are clubs that took the messages from April 2012, have gone, they've been speaking at their board level. There's clubs talking about affiliation or mergers of some description. There's talks of new entities in places. We are arm's length from some of this. Our role provincially is making sure we put the platform there, that clubs need to know what they need to do to get there. We will give advice and guidance, but really it's up to our membership now to have the discussions they need to ensure that players have an opportunity within their regions. Financial analysis, really important piece of information that isn't here for you tonight. It should have been, it isn't. First, hold my hand up and apologise. But what I will say is it will be available by February when we finalise this information. Very important piece of work. We've scoped it out. We know what we need to find out. We've got the resources to get it done. We just need to put a person to it. So we're in the process of identifying the right person to do that piece of work for us. We'll be making an appointment in regard to league management early next year. As you can see, this is new work for OSA on top of business as usual. So it's very important that we plan and prepare for this league properly. We're going to need more internal resources, and we'll be making an appointment very soon in the new year to pick up some of that accountability and workload. And as I said earlier, February will be when that final information is ready. So that's a flyover of the OPDL, which is the base of the new pathway as we move forward. So from that point, I spoke to earlier the current pathway to National Honours. That gets rewired. So what I'll do quickly though is share a quick video again to speak to what it is, what it means to be successful on the world stage, and we experienced that this year.
The chance to play for a bronze medal against France at the City of Coventry Stadium.
Ce match donc de la médaille de bronze entre le Canada et l'équipe de France.
Coach John Herdman said they don't want to come home being a team of players that almost managed to achieve something. They want to finish this job off. Now Diana Matheson, one last chance for Canada. Sophie Schmidt. Sophie Schmidt takes a deflection. Matheson! Is that the goal that wins bronze for Canada? Diana Matheson in stoppage time. It's Canada 1, France 0.
Une accélération des Canadiennes à 30 secondes de la fin de cette rencontre qui offre possiblement la médaille de bronze au Canada.
They wanted to see the flag rise. They will see the flag rise. It is a triumph for Canada's women's team as they win the bronze medal at the London Olympics.
Voilà, le Canada, médaille de bronze.
What a fantastic performance by a group of players who have given everything for their country.
So this is the pathway. This is what we're working towards now. On the female side, obviously the national team, the male side, the national team. We also have professional soccer and TFC in our province as well. So these are the avenues for the elite pathway. Currently, I'll set the table. So the current process is district programs through to regional programs where there's 3 phases and players come out of the clubs once a week over that phase. Identified at a regional program to come into the provincial program. The provincial program runs from October through to April, when players then go back into their club environments and they come back in for an international activity, and then All Stars, which is the national championships, around July. So that's our current structure. What will change here, and I understand you all can't see this, we did speak to it in more detail at the conference. This yellow block here is the OPDL. So we start here in April and we finish over here in November, which we've just spoken to. The revised pathway from there on is these OSA symbols here. There's a few more than 6 because there's a few other little activities we've built in here, but the regional program moving forward will be 6 weekends per year. So players we know are playing and training in an environment regularly that we have standards around, that we're monitoring, and we have confidence in our members for developing the player and putting them in, providing the appropriate environment for reaching these standards. So what we're doing is we'll be scouting and identifying players in this regular season. On 6 occasions, players that are identified will come out into a regional event, which will be training and fixtures, just over a weekend, and they'll go back into their environment. That'll happen 6 times throughout the year. Within those 6 regional weekends, players will be identified, and certain players will come out into provincial projects. There'll be 2 provincial projects per year. One that will be a training-based project with some fixtures with Quebec. The second project will be some form of international activity. So hopefully you're seeing a complete revised, talented pathway in regard to how we develop the player. I'll speak to it in a bit more detail. So, important message, the current regional, provincial programming for the cycle we're in, 2012 to 2013, doesn't change. Okay, so the players are in at the moment. They'll work through, like I've said, to All Stars in July 2013. The district programs in 2013, we're encouraging districts to continue to run their programming. There's some great work that's being done out there in the districts where players are being identified in the club programs. They're coming in. We're getting the best with the best within our areas, and we're providing extra programming, and it's great. If we can, continue to run those programs through to the end of that cycle, around about October 2013. At that point, we go through the regional ID. Let's continue to do that. But at that regional ID, the players won't be progressing in the old structure. They'll be going into the new structure. So players will be still identified. That'll be a chance for communication from us, from OSA, to players and parents about the new pathway. And then players will start to progress towards OPDL clubs for what will be a new pathway as we move forward. And as I said earlier, this is where we need to work hand in hand with districts as we start to deploy our resources in different ways. Okay, and the information we're working on, we're speaking to it at the moment. We're going to be providing more information and advocacy about how we go about that. The high performance plan from CSA is in development. Hopefully we're all aware Tony Fonseca has been appointed as the National Technical Director. This is great news. We haven't had a technical director with accountability for the overall technical direction for 3 years. So someone hasn't been in that position. Now we have that leadership. I met with Tony about 3 months ago. He was in a high performance role prior to this, where he was coaching in some of the environments, but also working on the men's side of the game, growing a vision, which obviously is great because that vision is now going to become reality. When he came down here to talk to us about what's needed, we first spoke to him about the OPDL and what we're planning. He was just like, brilliant. You're doing everything that I came here to help you move towards. We're in complete alignment with the steps that you're taking. Okay, spoke to the need for standards-based football, spoke to the need for relationships with TFC and our environment and movement of players and understanding between us, TFC, and our club environments. Spoke to the fact that we will now, so CSA, they come in and scout those regional projects, the provincial projects, and they will look at the players from U13. They'll be in and out regularly over a 3-4 year period. So then when it comes to under 17 male and female national sides, they know very much about the players that they'll be drawing up into those environments. So complete alignment from Tony. I also spoke to John Herbman as well. They are working in alignment on this national plan, but John's taking a slightly different approach in places because they don't have, the female game don't have the professional environment. They don't have TFC, Montreal, Whitecaps academies where there's relationships between. They have to do something else. And speaking to what was raised earlier, that acceleration program, John knows he has to ramp up the hours that some of our potential players have, and he's got a plan to do that. And we're doing exactly what he wants through starting a standards-based league and ensuring that we're getting a high level of player development and work that's happening in our club environment. So we're in complete support and alignment with CSA. Another message I will say, 2013 is the last year of National All-Stars. So CSA have announced that because the whole pathway and the way they identify talent is changing. Transition plan and roles. So our current provincial programming starts at U14, goes U14, 15, 16. As you can see, our OPDL is going to be starting with U13. So we've still got 3 phases that will phase out. So as OPDL grows, we'll catch another year group. We're going to look at, that's how we're currently projecting it, but we will look at whether that's the most effective way to phase out, but that's how we're projecting it at this point. OSA resource shift. So this, in the new structure, we have 7 regional coaches throughout the province. Their role at the moment primarily is to work with club head coaches to identify talent, to see where talent is throughout the province, to deliver the regional programs, to coach within our provincial program, and for regions that are more remote, they deliver a satellite provincial program. So primarily they're working with the player 80% of the time. In this new system, that role changes. It becomes more of a regional development coach, where they work 50% of the time with our membership outside of the OPDL. Okay? Helping facilitate coach education, helping implement the development of the recreational matrices, helping with the oversight on how we implement change in that recreational base to ensure we're providing more resources that reach down to help with that transition. They'll work within the OPDL environment probably 40-30% of the time, okay? Ensuring the standards are met, monitoring the standards, going in to help pass down the technical direction that comes from CSA. They'll be reviewing the games, and there'll be technical information that will be shared amongst coaches, providing support and mentoring as well to coaches within that environment, as well as coaches outside. They're only going to be working with the player 10% of the time. 6 regional weekends, 2 provincial projects. So a complete shift of those resources. So rather than working with 200 players, we're working with 200 coaches and affecting 3,000 players. Okay, so this is a really good message, and I'd be excited to hear those things if I was sitting there in your shoes. Opportunity. So now we've gone through OPDL, talented pathway. We're just now going to move into a couple of messages that I feel, again, misconceptions that are out there that I want to speak to, that I want us to start to understand, because as a membership, we're not understanding them. We're a little bit, we don't have the depth of history as a football culture, so we need to start to understand some of these things because it's stock standard in other parts of the world. First one is, does anyone recognise this diagram? Has anyone seen it before? A few nods, but not many. A few champions out there that know. This is, I spoke to Canadian Sport for Life, National Direction. This is their model. They speak to physical literacy. So for us, active start, fundamentals, learning to train. This is the most critical development stage out there for us. If we get this right, everything else flows. Perception out there that LTPD is only for the elite player couldn't be further removed from the truth. This is where we, as OSA, need to help resource you as clubs to get this piece right. If we get this right, we retain more players and we give them the appropriate development that they need to progress. It's so important. 70% of our clubs sit in this U12 and below. And nearly every club is here. It's the most important part. Clubs are the backbone, okay, of our system. It's so important that we support what happens here. Because if we don't get this right, we don't have any of this. Excellence. So that's our OPDL. That's the part players progressing on to professional or national environments. We don't have any of that if we don't get these ingredients right in these early development stages. And over here, Active for Life, that's our Soccer for Life. Okay, from U13 and up. And there's movement in between these environments. So if I flick that over to, don't get too shocked, I see a few eyes walk. This is a pathway that we shared at the conference again, and we spoke to everyone working together. We're taking a holistic approach to the development of the game rather than just growing player development. We're growing player, coach, referee and administrator collectively. We're trying to keep everyone involved in our sport, providing competitive, recreational and talented pathways. So if I look at this diagram, here's that physical literacy circle. That's that 70% of the membership. So I'm just showing our alignment with the national direction. That's our 70%. Start, fundamentals, learning to train. Those players then move to house league, recreational, to competitive, or to talented, which starts with the OPDL and progresses, and some of them will move over to elite, which would be TFC Academy, which would be national age group sides and beyond. Okay, so there's osmosis between some of these pathways and communication, but that whole pathway changes. So we pull out the player pathway, and my message really here is, at the moment, how do we define success as a membership? As a club, how do you define success? What does success mean to you as club presidents, technical directors, coaches, parents? What is success? How will we determine our club successful? Come on, there must be a measure out there.
Size of your membership.
Okay, retention, size of our membership, this would be one factor. Yes?
Number of players still playing
Still playing
at 40.
at 40? Yes, could be another measure as well. Well, retention is a big measure. Unfortunately, generally speaking, I don't think it's something we use. How we've been measuring success is how many trophies we win, how many teams make the OYSL. Okay? Well, that's not success. Success is about player movement through a structure, player movement through a system. Okay? And success will vary at different development stages. So success at active start is a player having fun, remembering to take his or her jacket home after practice. His success. Fundamentals, the same thing. Obviously, we're progressing the players' development. They're still having fun. They're coming back next season. They're becoming independent learners. Learning to train, again, we're passing on more understanding of the game. We're providing a stimulating, enjoyable environment. And then the players will continue to play recreationally, competitively, or start to progress to the OPDL or another talented environment because they have aspirations of going further than that. Okay, from U13 up, success might be winning trophies in Soccer for Life for some clubs. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to determine where we operate as a club and what success is for us. But we have a real problem with ownership of the player. We don't pass the player on to that next environment. In fact, we hold on to them. We hold on to them so that a player can win a Ontario Cup, can win entry into the OYSL. That's not success because we're holding back what's better for some of our players. We need to push players on through a system. That's what happens throughout the world. And then we need to celebrate that. You know what? We passed on 5 players into an OPDL environment. That's telling the membership that we're doing a great job of developing players. Okay, and we need to celebrate those sorts of things as we move forward. We need to change our measure of success. So we can ask questions about, but this is something that's really fundamental to what happens in the system, and it's not something that we understand too well. Okay, and it takes a paradigm shift. Okay, and it takes us doing what's best for the player rather than egos. Fields and goals. Another misconception that's out there. So I spoke to this a little bit earlier on, but we're producing documentation that's going to help with this transition. We haven't done that before now, so we haven't put information out into that space. Hopefully this will be really useful. It'll tell people that, you know what, there's going to be a period of transition to start with. In those younger development stages, it doesn't have to be lines and goals. Cones are fine. Pug nets are fine. Active start fundamentals. Let's not get all caught up in the environment and having to be perfect. Okay, and as we make that transition with municipalities, pulling goals in onto 18-yard boxes and coning off a line will be okay, because we need to take those steps hand in hand with our municipalities as we work through the transition to smaller-sided games. We've just started to get to municipalities to talk to them about this, and these are messages that they've been welcoming. It's been really well received. The fact that now they understand what we're going through, and the fact that we are phasing things in. We're not expecting 214. You must have the right information. As long as the field is right and it's coned off and the dimensions are right, that'll do. Okay, and the lines and the goals can come over time. That's been encouraging for them. Some municipalities can get there now, and they will. But others, due to their allocations and their processes with fields, take a little bit longer. But these are people we should be talking to. We should be understanding that process. We as a province have got to do a better job of that. So we're now starting to get to these places. We'll get to the provincial parks and recs next year as well, so there's a global understanding. In a couple of municipalities that we have gone into, they've said great, because until now we've had 3 or 4 different clubs tell us 3 or 4 different things. Now we understand what is actually happening from a provincial perspective, so it's been a well-received message. So hopefully that provides a little bit of information here. Really important relationship as we move forward. Okay, I understand that everyone supports different teams and has different approaches to the way the game's played, and that's great. But why I put the FA up at the moment is they're going through very similar change to us, this cultural change, moving away from the emphasis on winning in the younger development stages. And they're producing resources that speak to us now, that speak to our members, that speak to our coaches, that should speak to our parents. And they're nailing these messages, they're getting them right. And we need to get them out to our people as well. I had 4 hours a couple of months back with Nick Levitt, who's the National Director of Football Development with the FA, sharing stories about challenges and opportunities that we're having with implementing change. You'll be surprised, but they struggle with some things we don't. We struggle with some things that they don't, okay? Because as I said, there's no yellow brick road. Every country's finding their own way. While I'm going to share some resources with the FA, is because they're at that same place. I'd like to share Spanish videos, Dutch videos, okay, German videos. But you know what? They're a different language for one thing. But it's just called player development in those countries. They've been there for years. This is just player development. So they're not having to push through this cultural change like we are, because they've been doing these things for years. And a lot of our information on our website speaks to this and references this. So here's a quick little video.
Isn't it stupid making these kids play like adults? On really big pitches, where I hardly get any touches of the ball.
In massive goals, where I've got no chance of saving anything.
Where only the biggest, strongest kids can keep up. In games and leagues that don't even mean anything to us. We love playing football, but this just isn't right. So what do we want? We want smaller goals, with smaller pitches, where we get loads more touches of the ball. We still want to win, but we don't need really long leagues like grown-ups play. We play football because we love it. We play football because it's brilliant. Kids football is changing. Find out how to play your part at thefa.com/kidsfootball.
So how many of us have seen that video before? Good. Oh, good to see that we're connected in there. But a great message, and just really speaks to the fact that we've got to give the game back to these kids. For too long, it's been adult problems getting in the way of doing what's best for the kid, and that's what we've got to change. It's another shot. This is Nick Levitt from the FA. He's a big man, like me. Didn't go over. And what they did, they mocked up a goal to show what it's like if an adult played in a goal that what it's like for a child to play in an adult goal. So this is 9 feet high by about 36 wide. Okay, and they just use that as a marketing ploy to say, hey, doesn't make much sense, but this is what we've been doing.
Maybe that's what we need.
To score goals. So really my final message, my last few messages is this is where we've been sitting for a long time provincially within our environment in a comfort zone. We've been doing what we've been doing because it's easy, because this is what we know. And this is life to a certain point. But we've got to get outside of this small circle and get into this place, because this is where the magic happens. And we've already got a lot of districts and clubs that are here. We've got many others that are still here. They're sitting on the bench. Some aren't even lacing up their boots yet. Some are. Well, they've actually got to get them on and get on the park and join the team. Okay, because this train is leaving the station, and it's important that we're all on this train as we move forward. Key messages, clear vision. There's a pathway that we're working towards. This is a national direction based on best practice from around the world. I'm a broken record on this. We need to work together collectively. There's going to be some potholes in the road. There's going to be some bumps. But we're going to continue to make sure we're making decisions that are in the best interest of the kids. If we get things wrong, we'll understand why we got them wrong. We'll talk to our membership and we'll get them right the second time. But we're going to continue to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the kids. I can promise you.